got bitterness, it's got that hop aroma. If you're not super into IPAs, it's still got a big malt backbone to kind of appreciate there, and it just drinks wonderfully. And even 15 years later, it's one of my favorite beers. So it continues to be our number one seller, about 50% of our overall sales, and continue to brew that out of our larger facility. So kind of with that, I talked about the Brooklyn Center facility. We still run that. That's kind of our R&D facility now, where we do kind of small batch stuff, a lot of brewing kind of for beer hall, kind of trialing out new brands before we scale them up to the big brewery. If you're a Darkness fan, that's where Darkness comes out of. We will drink Multiverse. This is a very hop forward beer, hazy beer that we want to keep as fresh as possible. So we keep that at BC just to keep those batches small and coming out every week versus once every couple of weeks. All of our sour beer, barrel aged beers are coming out of Brooklyn Center. And it's a great little facility still that still pumps out quite a bit of beer. So we've got 2 brewing teams, one at each facility. We don't do a lot of rotation across from brewery to brewery, but we do have a lot of guys that have jumped from one to the other. So I manage wort production at both facilities, and I've got lead brewers that kind of run the day-to-day at each facility as well. So I kind of bounce back and forth from there to the big brewery, to our offices, and kind of just make the rounds every day. But it's kind of a quick history of SURLY. I'm sure, I don't know if Jeff has anything to add that I missed. But if you guys don't know Jeff,
things to add in 15 years, right?
What's that?
There's always things to add in 15 years, but
yeah,
nothing missed that's important to the history.
But the beer hall's great. We have an awesome culinary program. We kind of took the same approach at the beer hall, and we opened that we do with beer, where we hired kind of the best talent. We want to provide the best experience. That's something that we keep coming back to when we talk about SURLY. It's about the experience. It's not. That's why the pandemic sucks, is we haven't been able to kind of really have those experiences. But it's about getting people to the beer hall. If you go there, it's long communal seating. We have a lot of concerts out back. It's about getting people together, drinking beer together, meeting new friends, meeting old friends, and just kind of hanging out. And that's kind of what made SURLY and what continues to keep SURLY relevant, I think, is just bringing folks together to drink good beer and have a good time. And the food we make, best ingredients possible, a lot of barbecue. We've got a pizza place upstairs, pretty much, again, just really high quality stuff that they're doing there. So we're really looking forward to getting that back up and running. So hopefully June we'll open the beer hall for probably beers, and then slowly kind of scale back into the food world. We kind of have to rehire everybody, retrain a lot of folks. Our executive chef has moved on, and so we're in the process now of hiring anyone. So if you guys know of any great chefs or hospitality folks up in Minnesota, let them know that we're looking for them.
Sweet. Hey Ben, can you tell us a little bit more about the beer hall? Because I know that's a little bit new. I know SURLY's been around for 15 years, but the beer hall is kind of a newer addition before the pandemic and everything else. So.
Yeah, so we're located kind of right near campus, right between Minneapolis and St. Paul. If you ever watched a Gopher football game, we're just down the street from the TCF stadium there. And it's cool. We built, one of the reasons we chose the site we're on is we've got well water there. It's really hard to drill a new well in Minneapolis, in the city proper. But if you're in Minneapolis and you're a brewery and you're not on a well, you're subject to city water, and city water in Minneapolis is all surface water. So some of you as brewers can probably understand the challenges there, because the nature of that water will change through the seasons. Even if it rains overnight, since we're getting most of our water from the river, even though it's being treated, you can get quite a variance in mineral content and even pH of water. So getting those wells was one of the big reasons we settled on the property we're on. So it used to be an old potato factory, and just kind of a rundown industrial part of town. And so we've been there a little over 6 years now, and it's crazy to see, because it's all been redeveloped. We've got a O'Shaughnessy distillery opening next door in a month or two. I was just over there this afternoon hanging out with them. It's kind of an aside, but they just hired brewmaster from Jameson of 23 years. So I was talking with him this afternoon. It's pretty amazing what they're doing. They've got a food building opening up just across the way. Transit way comes down, light rail comes down, a lot of residential stuff coming up. But when we first opened that place, it was kind of a derelict area, a lot of bums, a lot of just old rundown grain elevators and abandoned buildings. But we built this wonderful beer hall. So the beer hall itself is probably about 350 seats. And then upstairs we've got, started out as a fine dining restaurant, but it's since been converted to a pizza joint, which has been a little bit more, just makes a little bit more sense for who we are and where we are. And that's been wonderful. It's kind of New Haven style pizza, done really well. And we also have a huge event center upstairs for corporate events, weddings, private parties, and they have their own kind of kitchen and bar area too, and kind of use that as overflow as well. And then outside, we've got this massive beer garden that could hold, I don't know, probably like 800, 900 people. So obviously COVID hit, and even with some of the restrictions being lifted, it's still been a struggle to keep the place open. We've got a club in town called First Avenue Music Club, and we always like to say we're kind of like First Avenue. If we're not sold out, we're not really making money. So it's been a struggle to keep that place running, even when we've had some of those restrictions lifted. But now with vaccinations kind of doing what they're doing, they're looking at maybe 70% of people in Minnesota by June or July. So we're hoping to get back up and running. But it's been a lot of fun. It's a great place to have beers, to meet friends. It's kind of funny, like just the variety of people we get in there. You know, we figured it'd be beer nerds and a lot of dudes with beards and stuff. But I mean, we have a group of women that used to come in once a week. It was all new mothers with their babies would come in and hang out and have lunch together. We've got a lot of business folks coming in during the day for lunch, and families, you know, multi-generational families coming in with 8, 9, 10 people on a Saturday to hang out. So it's just it's a great community center, a great place to gather, grab food and grab drinks. And for me personally, and for the brewery, it's a great hub for R&D as well. So it's big enough that we can, with the Brooklyn Center Brewery, we have the throughput at the beer hall to brew a batch of beer at Brooklyn Center, kind of see how it does, tweak it, and continue to make changes before that beer ever gets scaled up for a packaged beer that goes to market, which is huge because in this day and age with so many different breweries, so many different beers, everybody kind of wants the new beer. We can kind of go to market with something that we know is, you know, the right beer. It's packaged in the right package. It's at the right price. You know exactly what it's going to be, and it's gonna hit all those marks. So that's kind of been a struggle with the pandemic because we haven't had that outlet. So also looking forward to getting back to R&D brewing here in the next couple months, because it's been really kind of crappy not to have that outlet during the pandemic.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Furious, some of the malts and the hops you use in this?
Yeah, so Furious, again, this is actually the second beer that we ever released. The first one was Bender, RIP. We don't make regular Bender anymore. We make coffee Bender, but Furious is a combination of two-row and Golden Promise for the base malt. And then it's got Dingmans, which is a Belgian maltster, aromatic malt. It's got a little bit of Simpson's crystal malt, like a crystal medium, but not too much because you don't want to get that cloying kind of crystal malt 1990 IPA flavor. And then we use just a kind of a kiss of roasted barley. We pre-mill that and actually add it to the lauter. So halfway through the lauter, we'll add that. So kind of minimizing too much roast character and really going for the color from that roasted barley. So that's kind of the trick with this one, using as little crystal malt as possible and just a kiss of roasted barley for color. And for hops, right now, Furious we're actually bittering it with a hop extract, a bittering extract, which has been great. It's helped us with efficiency on the brew house on the hot side. And then the Whirlpool, we're using a little bit of Simcoe, Amarillo, Cascade, and Autumn. And then the dry hop is basically those same hops. It's primarily Simcoe, Amarillo with Autumn, Cascade, and we use a little bit of Warrior in the dry hop as well. But Simcoe and Amarillo are kind of the driving hops on this beer. And ABVs are about 6.7, 6.66 if you want to go old school. Finishing gravity, we use Plato. It's about 3.4 Plato finishing. I believe starting is about 15 Plato.
Hey, Ben, you mentioned that you switched over from regular hops to the hops extract and it increased efficiency. Was that solely because of the volume of hops that you had to use and the extract was less than that?
Yeah, definitely. So, and this is the only brand we're currently doing that with. And again, that's more of just a brew house efficiency. This is, again, one of our largest brands. And if we can get even 4 or 5 extra barrels out of every 100-barrel turn, that adds up pretty quick. And also in terms of buying hops, storing hops, the extract can be stored warm. It's a lot less, takes up a lot less room. Jeff can attest to that. And it's just kind of, it's easier to handle. So it was a decision we made a few years ago, and we did a lot of different side-by-side trials. So we do, pellets, extract, and we do sensory test, obviously look at efficiencies, did a lot of long-term stability testing and actually performed better there too. So on the shelf, it was holding up a little bit better. And as we send beer farther and farther away and have a lot less control over how it's stored, how long it's going to be on the shelf, those things are really important for us.
Very cool. No, it tastes really good. I didn't do a side by side, but I really couldn't tell a difference of any change from the older versions where you used all hops and then the hops extract. So that's very well. It's good.
And cold side, we're still 100% hops. I mean, we're using pellets, but we're still 100% pellets on cold side. We haven't moved to any of those extracts. We trialed a bunch. I haven't got quite the same experience on the cold side, but hot side in terms of just alpha, I've been really impressed with kind of the latest extracts that have been coming out compared to maybe 10 years ago.
Hey, Ben, there was a question on the brand of extract we're using.
It's technically Pato was the hop it comes from, which is experimental 692. It's a relatively new hop. I think it's 692, and we get it from our hop supplier at Haas.
This Furious always was and still is fantastic beer.
Thank you. And it's one of the beers over the years that we continue to tweak and make very small changes, but that's kind of keep it consistent, right? Like we always joke because vintners have the luxury of vintage, right? It can taste different every year. And brewers don't have that same luxury, despite the fact that we've got multiple ingredients that are harvested and definitely have the potential to be quite different. Barley from year to year, hops from year to year. They can come from the same farm, from the same hill, and have substantially different flavor from year to year. So it's kind of our job as brewers to make the tweaks necessary to make sure that the consumer doesn't notice the difference, even though that the terroir or the beer that we're getting could be quite different.
I would say the biggest change in the beer over from that first couple batches is maybe a year in, it started getting dry hopped.
Yeah, the original Furious wasn't dry hopped, if you can believe that.
So, the first batch had almost no bitterness, the first dry hop batch. And it took, a few batches to dial it in to get the right balance of aroma versus bitterness.
We actually found the original recipe had been lost, as mythology goes. We recently found it, and there's been talked about maybe brewing it at the beer hall just for fun, just to do side by side, but we haven't quite pulled the trigger. But it'd be interesting to see truly how it's evolved over the years. And that was the biggest evolutionary step, was after it was maybe year 2 or so when the dry hop was introduced.
Were the hops, most of the flavor hops, always added in the whirlpool, even in the old recipe, or were they sometimes like late in the boil?
Original, I think there was a late kettle addition, but generally most of it was whirlpool. And then we kind of took some out of the whirlpool and dry hop, and now it's whirlpool and dry hop. And over the years, at SURLY, under both Todd's reign, and then when I kind of took over, we've slowly evolved, and we really don't do much late hopping at all, and even whirlpool hopping we've gone away from quite a bit. We've done quite a bit of trials comparing beers with whirlpool and dry hops, and then doing the same beer with just dry hops, and doing side by sides and kind of blind panels. And a lot of our beers were preferred with just a bigger dry hop and whirlpool hops, which is interesting.
Pretty amazing you get that bitterness out of the dry hop.
Yeah, we're still doing bitter additions in the kettle, so that hasn't changed. But in terms of aroma hops, so there's brands like Axeman will still do whirlpool hops, Furious obviously, but a lot of the other dry hop beers and newer beers we've shied away from as much whirlpool hopping as we've done in the past. And our efficiencies seem to be better as well. We seem to be getting better efficiency overall.
The one you didn't mention was abrasive. Does that have them in the whirlpool too, or no?
That one, I believe we took everything out of the whirlpool and put it all in dry hops over the past 5 years. And that one also started as a single dry hop, and now abrasive gets a double dry hop. So we dry hop basically right before it gets to terminal, and then again a couple days later. So that one gets kind of a split now into two dry hops. Axeman went through that evolution as well quite a few years ago, where it went from a single dry hop to a double dry hop. We felt we just get a little more juicy, kind of dank notes doing that.
Bill, it's been a while since I've been up to SURLY, but I think the last time I was there, you guys were playing around with a new toy, which was sort of a hop infused sort of thing as you transferred out of the basically the secondary into the bright tank, and it was like I don't want to call it a hop torpedo, but it was sort of a hop infuser that you would run it through. Have you guys done any more with that, or has that been used at all? Or
not a lot. I mean, we tried out some stuff at Brooklyn Center at the small brewery, and we had a lot of issues with oxygen pickup doing that, and yeah, it never really dialed in. It never really worked the way we wanted it to. But kind of different topic, but the dry hopping at the big brewery with 600 barrel tanks, we do use a cool little machine called a dry hop nick. So Brooklyn Center, we just climb the top of the tank, dump hops in, pretty straightforward, right? MSP, the big brewery, you can't climb up on top of those tanks and dump a pallet of hops in. So we use a machine that basically you hook up a recirc loop from the bottom of the tank, and then there's dry hop arm that goes up and down into the top of the tank and does a recirc, and then it's got kind of a hopper on top of it, and kind of a valve and a pump at the bottom, and the pump looks kind of like a garbage disposal. So the impeller kind of grinds the hops up as it sucks in. So that we've got a booster pump that creates a low pressure suction zone. So you, even though you're recirculating the tank, and the bottom of the tank's probably at 2 bars, you have enough suction where you're actually creating low pressure zone in the hopper, and it basically sucks those hops in, grinds them up, and infuses them in line. And that's kind of how we dry hop there. And you use a lot less hops. You're getting great extraction from the hops, great hop aromas. One of my initial concerns was we beat up the beer a little bit, but we haven't seen that at all. So we're able to get more hop aroma with less overall hops. A very mechanical operation, but it works really well. We've done some tweaks over the years, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to operate, but once you get it dialed in, it works really well.
That proprietary SURLY piece of hardware, because I've never heard of anyone doing that. It's pretty cool.
No, it's the Rolec is the company that made our brew house, and it's the design that Rolec and now Amco pump maker is part of it too. So they're becoming more and more popular. Like our friends at Modest down the street have a very small one for their little brewery. And it's great because it not only works from hops, but we've used it for coffee additions. You can add fruit. I mean, basically anything you want to add to beer that's not, super hard, that it can kind of go through that impeller, you can add to beer. And the way it kind of adds it in line, you get really great extraction. But yeah, I'm not sure. A lot of the bigger breweries are using it that are dry hopping. that it's an alternative from kind of the Sierra Nevada torpedo thing. My biggest concern with the torpedo style and some of the other hop cannons, if you will, is the amount of pressure you have to have those things under. Because in my mind, that's a safety risk. It only takes one mistake to seriously hurt someone potentially. So just any super high pressure operation in the brewery, like if we can avoid it, I'd like to. So that's kind of why we're using the operation we do now, which isn't adding any additional pressure other than what the tank's already under. It's just really creating suction to kind of pull those hops in line. How's everyone doing on beer? You guys ready for beer number 2 yet? Some of you guys probably already moved on, but I was gonna say Axeman's probably a great beer number 2.
What about your yeast?
Our yeast?
Yeah.
So for our ale yeast, at least for Furious, Axeman, and kind of the heavy hitters, we use English ale yeast. We get our yeast from White Labs. It's strain 007. We've been using that for years. It's a workhorse. Flock's great, harvest great. We'll use it for 13, 14 generations with no issues. Yeah, just wonderful. Pretty neutral flavor, really overall. But it ferments well, and it's don't really see any mutations or anything weird happening with it as long as you treat it well.
Hey, homebrewers, why yeast? Is that the 1968 equivalent? If I'm not mistaken.
No, 68 is London Ale.
Okay, thanks.
Ben, do you do any filtering, or do you usually let the yeast just take care of it, block it out?
We don't do any true filtration, but we do centrifuge the beer. So post dry hopping, we'll chill the beer and centrifuge it off, but no actual like plate or DE filtering. Thank God. That's a mess. At some point down the line, we might look into some polish filtering, but for now, it's the centrifuge does a great job. So at both facilities, we're running centrifuges. Westphalia from GEA, solid operation. And we run everything.
The second beer is which one?
X-Man. We got this guy. X-Man is probably one of the easiest beers to clone if you want to make it at home. It's 100% Golden Promise malt, 50-50 Citra Mosaic. It's probably about 1.5 pounds per barrel in the whirlpool, 50-50, and probably about 3.5 pounds per barrel dry hop, again split in half between the two. So it's surprisingly simple beer, and this beer, I think we've fallen to number 2 now, but as of a couple months ago, it was the #1 American IPA on Beer Advocate in the world, which is pretty sweet. And this was originally a collaboration with Amager in Denmark that Todd did. It used to be called Todd the Axeman. Now it's just Axeman with Todd's departure, and we just figured we'll simplify it. And I can tell you firsthand, Todd always hated the name anyway. So we did not name it at SURLY. They named it at Amager, and he always hated it. But it's one of those beers that we made. We served it at SURLY Fest one year. Just figured we'd brew one batch, and I think it's our number 3 seller by profit, if not volume, right now. So it's doing well, and it continues to kind of outperform projections. And it's still. This is another brand that's primarily made at BC. We made a few batches at MSP out of necessity, but we still try to keep this as fresh as possible, as small batch as possible. And again, just a banger, but it's a simple beer. It really doesn't get any simpler than that.
It's an awesome beer. I mean, really good.
This beer and the next one, their ABV's up over 7. Did you use any sugar in there, or is this straight malt?
These are straight malt. Beer's like abrasive when you get up to the 8, 9, 10 mark, especially if we want them super dry. We'll maybe use some DME or some dextrose occasionally, but for the most part, for most of our IPAs, they're 100% malt.
Nice fruity character.
said citric and mosaic in the hops bill, right?
Yep, yeah, 50-50 exactly. Decent bitterness up front, and again, small whirlpool charge, then pretty big dry hop. And again, this dry hop does get split between 2 separate dry hops. But 100% Golden Promise malt. So Golden Promise, most of you are probably aware, it's a nice heritage barley out of the UK. We get it from Simpsons. I think we're one of 2 breweries in the country, maybe 3 now, that has a actual bulk malt silo for Golden Promise. Founders is the other. Yeah, it's a really nice malt. There's a little bit of Golden Promise and Furious as well.
Same.
How do they
yeast.
actually ship it to you in bulk?
I think it comes in. That's a good question. I think tanker trucks on rail, and then we get it in trucks like big. They look like gas trucks, but they're full of malt, and they just blow it into the silo with compressed air. So I'm not sure how it comes across the water. It's on a container of some sort.
While everybody's sipping on this, just a real quick question. What's the water like out in Minnesota? You guys just pulling tap stuff and filtering and using it?
Yeah, well, I kind of mentioned earlier. So at our new facility, we're on a well water, so we're getting down into groundwater. We're tapped into the Jordan Aquifer. So it's hard, but it's relatively clean of minerals. I think the sulfite and the chloride levels are almost 0. So we build all that back up when we're brewing, which is nice. So we don't do a lot of treatment to our water. We're basically taking it straight from the well and just adding in salts before we brew. So we don't have like a RO or any other kind of treatment on the front end, which is awesome. That's again one of the reasons we chose our site. Brooklyn Center water is it's not great. It is groundwater, which is nice. So it's not changing over time, and it does go through Brooklyn Center treatment plant, and that hardwood's got a decent amount of carbonate. Sulfite and chloride levels are fairly high, so it's you can't do a lot of adjustment to it. So again, without treatment, we kind of do a lot of adjustments with malts, whether that's with acidulated malts and with some other malts, but still managed to put out some good beer. I'd love to get a true RO system and build up our water at some point, but it's a pretty big investment.
Do you do any kind of treatment with your wastewater?
We buffer everything, so we've got big buffer tanks so we manage pH and temperature. But otherwise, it just goes to the city treatment. But at least once it doesn't go down to the city at extreme pHs, and we monitor that pretty closely because we've gotten dinged pretty big in the past by the Met Council up here.
Well, the hop in these first 2 beers, the hop brightness and character is really, really coming through. So whatever you guys are doing, you're doing it right.
Cheers. Thank you.
Also another very fresh one. So thank you for that.
Great. Again, that's always good to see. It's like I said, the farther it goes away from the brewery, the less you can control in terms of who's got what beer, how fresh is it. Our distribution partners, for the most part, do a decent job, but there's only so much you can do as it gets far away. So it's always nice to see fresh beer. And the last thing you want to do is have someone's first experience with Furious or with Axeman to be with a beer that's been outside of date code and tastes horrible, So we all know IPAs after 4 or 5 months don't taste very good.
Yeah, if it's not an incredibly hoppy beer, I usually don't fret about it too much, but stuff like this, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you guys monitor like dissolved oxygen and stuff when you package?
Yes, very closely. It's one of the big pushes we've done in the past 4 years in terms of increasing shelf stability. So out the door, most of our beer at MSP is under 100 parts per billion, and BC's come light years from where it used to be, and usually that's under 200, if not 150, 100 lately too. So done a lot of work. We've actually sent our guys to SEMA school and really kind of dialed in the maintenance and uptake of our canning lines. The bigger plant, the canning line's a little bit better. It's kind of the way it goes. The other plant's a little bit older, a little bit harder to maintain. but way better than it was years ago. And that's kind of your secret weapon. That's the last thing you control before the beer leaves the brewery is the oxygen content in those cans. And whatever you can do to keep that as low as possible is going to help that beer survive. Kind of like my holy trinity in brewing that I always talk about is quality, consistency, and stability. And those are the three things we can control before the beer leaves the building. And after that, it's up to our distributor, it's up to our retail partners, and our sales team are kind of the knights of the round table out there trying to protect the integrity of the brand, but they can only do so much.
Ben, which facility do you get to oversee more often? The smaller, I don't want to say older, but the older facility, and or the newer, bigger facility that you guys have built?
Honestly, it's about equal time at both. I probably spend more time at the bigger brewery just because my office is closer to there. But in terms of just attention wise, they both take up a lot of time. And the smaller breweries usually more geared towards R&D, towards recipe development, towards some of the barrel work we're doing, where the big brewery is more about maintaining the quality and consistency side. So we're looking at we've got new malt in, how's that performing this on this batch versus the batch we did last week. We're doing a lot of different trials with new processes and technology, process aids, stuff like that. But I'm blessed to have great teams at both facilities, so I try to not to be a micromanager and just kind of be available, be around to help out those guys as much as possible. But a big part of my job is also maintaining our raw ingredient contracts. So I spend a lot of time talking to our malt providers. Obviously, hops is huge. We're lucky to have a great quality department. So we have over the years grown relationships with our hop suppliers and farmers. So we get a lot of R&D hops, kind of the small, just single box lots that aren't available to consumers yet, and we can trial those, and we'll actually can like a very small amount, send them out to our hop suppliers. We'll analyze them in-house and give them a lot of data. So it's really helped us to be at the forefront of a lot of the experimental hops lately, which is awesome. So that's also a big part of my job too, is just kind of seeing and looking for ways to be innovative, whether it's with new hop products or new technology, stuff like that, which is a lot of fun.
With all the responsibilities you've mentioned, do you actually get to brew anymore?
Nope. not physically. I couldn't tell you actually the last time I was on the brew deck brewing, other than helping out for a half hour here and there. But that's not a bad thing necessarily. I mean, part of the job is really the big picture focus and again empowering the team below me. But doesn't mean I don't miss it. I'd like to get more on the brew deck as we get back with the beer hall and into more R&D. I'm hoping to actually be able to do some stuff on our small system and help out. But I'm more of the vision guy, and then I kind of have other people that actually execute on that, and then we kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I'm sure you miss shoveling out mash tuns.
I do. Luckily, we have kind of automated systems now where we don't even have to do that anymore. The brewers are spoiled, so they've got a little pump that just grains out into our spent grain silo. But doesn't mean it doesn't fail. That's actually probably the last thing I did was before we had a spent grain silo, we just had a truck that would park out under a tube that would be there. And it's happened twice, which is 2 times too many, where about midnight you get a phone call where, hey, I grained out. I went outside, the truck wasn't there. So you've got 6 basically tons of grain sitting on the pavement. So you have to literally go out there and just shovel it into a dumpster. Not great, but shit happens.
Now, how far are the 2 facilities apart?
About 20 minutes apart. I mean, by the way the crow flies, it's probably like 8 miles, but you kind of have to go around the city to get there. But so the big brewery's in Minneapolis, kind of right on the edge of St. Paul, and then the other brewery's in Brooklyn Center, which is a suburb just north of Minneapolis. It's northwest.
I think it's 14 miles by drive.
Yeah.
And how do you dispose of your spent grain? Is it the farmer that is supposed to pick it up?
We work with a broker. They're called Commodity Specialists. And they're wonderful. We worked with a couple different folks over the past, and these guys have far been the best, and they're very professional. They actually take the spent grain and they sell it to farmers, which is relatively novel in the past 10 years for craft brewing. In the past, we would just rely on farmers that would take it and basically give it away. But they've been great. They're really reliable. They show up on time. They take it what they need, and then they take their cut, and then we get a small amount of that back at the end of the day. So it's been nice to work with those guys. So we've got 2 sprint grain silos. We'll fill them up. So at MSP, they'll maybe come 4 or 5 times a week, depending on how busy we are. Brooklyn Center is smaller. They usually come once or twice a week, and basically just come in with a trailer, park it underneath the silo, open the valve, dumps it in, and they take it out and deliver it to farms, and as feed for mostly pigs, some cows. And in the past, our beer halls actually, purchased some of the animals from those farms too. So it's kind of a full circle thing.
But Ben, I know you missed the times of ski.
Yeah. So the original brewery, when I started, we had this old guy called Ski who'd come, and he had this broken down truck. I mean, he was reliable. I'll give him that, but he kind of looked like he'd been dead for 6 years already. Like his leg didn't really work. He looked like he came out of like the backwoods of Tennessee, and I'd be working overnight, so you'd be the only guy in the brewery. You'd have music on. It's always kind of just weird being in the middle of the night by yourself, and you turn around, this old guy would just be sitting there and have a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. It's kind of scared the living Jesus out of you. But yeah, I wonder whatever happened to that guy, because when we moved to the new brewery, we had to obviously upgrade to a bigger system, but he was a character for sure.
How's everybody doing
Tell
up
you
here?
that we had a farmer that picked up for his cattle, and when he would be driving into his road going past the pasture where the cows were, he swore that the cows had a smile on their face because of the sweetness that was in the truck coming.
That's awesome.
You can use that if you wish.
I love that.
Hey, what's the IBUs on the X-Man? I've been looking on the can. I don't, they usually don't list it, but I'm just curious.
IBUs on Axeman are probably about, I'd say 50. That's me, just, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd say about 50.
I was just actually just trying to back into, you had pretty much mentioned what the recipe was. So I'll build it on Beersmith, just try to back in. That's why I was asking, to be honest with you.
For sure.
What was the IBU in Furious?
Furious is about 65.
Pardon me for not knowing too much about your brewery, but do you do many lagers or any at all?
Yeah, we love lagers. The third beer, or maybe his fourth beer we ever produced and packaged, was a beer called Hell. It's a Helles lager. It's still one of our top 5 beers, and it's just a really nice, clean German lager.
I like that beer.
If you come to the beer hall, I am a big fan of lagers. Like that's normally what I'm drinking if I'm at home, if I'm drinking beer. So I like to do a lot of exercises in just brewing traditional style lagers, and not always a big hit with our hospitality or marketing department because they're not the cool beers to brew. But personally, I think it's fun, and I think it's a good exercise for our brewing team as well to kind of research and brew as traditional as a whatever style lager you're doing, whether it's a Dunkel or some style pills or anything else. And it's not, I like to have at least 2 or 3 of those on at the beer hall at any time.
They don't get canned or anything?
Occasionally do. We had a nice pills in a couple variety packs in the past couple of years called Warp Zone that did fairly well, and just none of them graduated really to standalone packages, unfortunately. But not a lager, but we did have a standalone Kolsch last. Did we do it last year? I don't remember, but we had it last 2-3 years. Just a really nice Kolsch style German ale, very traditional, very true to style, which is a wonderful beer. Yeah, I mean, if I had my way, we'd make a lot more lagers, but unfortunately, the masses aren't quite ready to consume them on the level that we need to make them viable.
And one more question.
Oktoberfest every year, though, right?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned barrel aging too. Does that ever get out on the market, or does it stay local?
Definitely. So the biggest thing that we probably release is we do a barrel aged darkness, which just hit market in, was it March? And so that's our Russian Imperial Stout that we release every year. And this year it was aged in 12-year Elijah Craig barrels. So every year the barrels can kind of change depending on what we can find. We always try to find the best barrels. So originally we used to put it in rye barrels, and now we've kind of graduated more to bourbon because we've got a great line on nice bourbon barrels. And our anniversary beers are generally barrel aged and a little bit more limited in terms of distribution, so a little bit harder to find. But last year we did a barley wine style ale that was aged in Parker Heritage wheat wine barrels. So Parker Heritage is Heaven Hill's kind of premier line. They do a different barrel every year. So this year we've actually got our anniversary beer in there. Heavy char bourbon barrels, 10-year. So and what else? We've done wine barrel aged stuff in the past. If you've ever had Pentagram, that's a dark sour Brett beer aged in red wine barrels. Misanthrope aged in white wine barrels. But again, those are always relatively limited release. So definitely very possible that a little bit harder to find in your guys' market just because it's so limited, but kind of depends. But we're getting back in. We kind of shied away from a lot of barrel aged stuff for a couple of years just as we were kind of growing and maintaining core brands. But now we've got a little bit more leeway, a little bit better program in place to do more and more stuff. So we did a fun project with New Belgium last year where New Belgium actually sent us their sour Felix culture, and we aged that with a blend of a beer we made in some barrels and some Pentagram barrels and some other barrels, and then some virgin oak barrels, blended it and released that last August. And we're doing a similar project this year where we've got a beer that we're aging in barrels that we're actually going to ship out to New Belgium, and they are going to release that in a blend with their beer this winter. So we're always doing kind of small fun projects like that. We've also started doing some darkness variants, so very small amounts of barrel aged darkness beers. So last year we did a mole darkness, which was a bourbon barrel. We did I'm trying to think what was old fashioned darkness,
Vietnamese coffee,
and rum barrels,
and then double vanilla.
And double vanilla, which is a lot of vanilla. But so question, I guess, yeah, or answer the question, yeah, we do a lot of barrel aged stuff. It's just usually very small amounts in terms of what actually gets to market. Draft, we do a lot of R&D stuff. So if you come to the brewery, we usually have selling in the beer hall that's been barrel aged. I was actually just tasting barrels the other day for the beer hall reopening. So we've got kind of an inventory of single barrel and some special barrel project stuff.
And small is relative. I mean, Ben's talking about a small amount, and that's when you can compare it to 600 barrels, maybe twice a week of Furious. But for barrel aged darkness, we might bring in 200 wooden barrels.
Be able to get those things for free. Remember that?
Yeah.
Hardly the case anymore.
Not the case anymore.
Yeah, I was wondering, like Heaven Hill, Goose uses their barrels too, right? Is it like a struggle for the breweries to compete for those primo barrels?
It can be. We're lucky to have built some really strong relationships with some folks that deal directly with the distilleries. Like I've got a great contact that works directly with Heaven Hill. So they'll dump the barrels, and he's basically just the guy that brokers them for them, because a lot of those distilleries now won't even do direct to breweries. So you have to kind of go through brokers, but they've got kind of the guys that they work with a lot. So, and then there's some larger broker houses that are just kind of the secondary market, and those are the ones that it gets pretty expensive. But again, we're lucky to be kind of at the size, and we've been around for a while and have built relationships that allow us to kind of get the front of the line for some of that stuff. It's still a struggle though to get. If you want to get like a Pappy barrel, it's not going to happen. Like, you might be able to get one or two, but nothing cool. But if you want to get 12-year Elijah Craig, which in my mind is some of the best barrels I've ever had, that's definitely possible.
What states do you distribute into?
Jeff, I'm gonna let you answer that one because I feel like it changes all the time.
We're in Boston, Philadelphia, as far as furthest east, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, both the Dakotas, Nebraska, Colorado, Arizona. And then we do what's called brew pipeline. So we have kind of pulse shipments once a month, sometimes every other month to other areas of the country. And that's typically 2 different beers and that's it. Mostly just cans, but kegs are starting to flow out again like they do with everything, with some of the restrictions lifting. So though, I mean, with those pulse shipments, my buddy's store in San Diego is selling 2 of our beers right now. So it's kind of cool to see it really hit coast to coast.
What was the going back to darkness of the barrel age darkness specifically? What was the bounty, the yield on that this year? I'm going to start looking for it. You said it was done in March, right?
It released in, I believe it was March.
Yep, it shipped. Yeah, I think it was like March. If I look at the calendar, I can figure it out.
Do you remember how many cases we ended up with? We brewed about 300 some barrels of that. It was a pretty large volume of beer. And then in terms of what went to your market, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I can if you give me a minute.
Oh, I don't need an exact number. It's not like I'm going to take that information and run a spreadsheet on it or something. I just
No.
curious what my odds are.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a decent amount out there, I guess. It's always hard to say how much goes to which market. If you're in the Twin Cities, it's kind of like there should be some around. You just might have to hunt for it. But as you get farther and farther out, it just kind of depends on the distributor, how much they're going to bring in and where they go.
I'm in Indiana,
was
but just barely. I
Yeah.
can make it in Illinois and find it.
It was kind of weird this year too, because we had a couple markets that opted out of it. Part of that's just 750 milliliter bottles are selling slower and slower and slower year by year. So some of our distributors don't take any of them anymore. But we had, like distributors that don't typically do a ton of volume ordered almost half their truck in March was barrel aged darkness. So it was really more than any year I've seen all over the board of what went where. I would think you look at other years and it's kind of the percentage that distributor sells of our beer overall is the percentage of the darkness they got or barrel aged darkness they got. That definitely was not true this year.
Did you guys do variants of the darkness this year? I know in the past you've done 2 or 3 to 4 different variants. Was there any this year?
Yeah, so we did the mole darkness, which has got chocolate, chilies, vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon, cayenne. We did the double vanilla, and that was literally just a crap ton of vanilla beans. And then we did a Vietnamese coffee one that was in rum barrels, coffee, vanilla, a little bit of coconut. And that was the first time we actually sent variants to market. In the past, all the variants were sold at Darkness Day. And we didn't have Darkness Day this past year, so we sent them to market. And they had, if I have that we did it all with a single can in a box. I think I might have a visual aid. So I don't have the darkness one, but it comes in like a single box. Like this is our 13th anniversary beer. So you get a box and there's a can in the box. So that's how we did the darkness variants this year. That's how we did our anniversary beers and some other specialty releases. So it's kind of a new way to do beers. Jeff mentioned it earlier where 750s usually don't really sell as they used to. And especially in the pandemic when you're not drinking with friends, the smaller package kind of single serve box seems to be doing really well. So darkness variants, the 3 of those were sold individually in those, as well as our anniversary beer and a special release we did with New Belgium this past year. And we'll continue that this year with darkness variants, our 15th anniversary beer. We'll re-release our 13th anniversary beer on Friday the 13th. We've got some other stuff potentially that we'll do too.
Are you going to do that every year? The 13th anniversary?
So far, yeah, it's the plan. I think we're planning to do it again next year. It's been a fun beer for us to do. It's a kind of a dessert stout style base beer aged in maple syrup ex-bourbon barrel that we get from Vermont. And it's a really cool beer. We really like it. As long as we can find the barrels, it's a fun beer to do on us. Again, it's a very small amount of volume, and then release it on Friday the 13th. And every year, obviously, those are a little bit different. So this year, it's I believe it's in August 13th. So we'll see that go to market then.
I know I don't usually, talk about this, but that is a pretty cool box that it's in too.
Yeah, it's cool. And the cool thing about it, it's our friends just down the street are making the boxes for us. So it's our neighbors, Studio on Fire. One of our former employees works there. So it's just kind of a cool synchronicity there where it's working with some local artists, some folks that are familiar with SURLY, friends of ours. And so, and seems to do well in market too. Consumers seem to like the package. It's innovation isn't always is beer. Sometimes it's package, sometimes it's technology, and that's a big part of what we're always looking to do. So I think it's definitely something different for us and something that no one else in our market is doing.
So I just looked up, we sent 70 cases of full pallet of barrel aged darkness down to Lakeshore, which is pretty sure where Steve picked up beer for this.
Okay.
Are we ready to move on?
Steve, did you get us any of that?
Actually, Nicole helped hook us up with this one, so I didn't actually go get it, but maybe I have to send an email to her and ask her for some of that.
Sure. Yeah. So next beer is mapping the multiverse. So this is SURLY's hazy core year-round IPA. Some of you may remember a beer called One Man Mosh Pit. That was our year-round IPA last year. So we're kind of switching it up this year with a different beer, but kind of the same SKU, same price point, same kind of target consumer. So SURLY definitely wasn't the first one in the game with hazy IPAs. And when we decided to kind of go down that route, I basically asked Omar for the time to do it right, because again, with our beer, we're not selling it out the door by a pallet, so it's all gone in a day. It's got to sit on a shelf for 2-3 months on the market. And I think some of you have probably had some hazy beers after a few weeks that just don't taste very good. So my biggest concern was, how do we produce a beer that fits the kind of the niche that folks are looking for, but can also be relatively shelf stable as much as a beer can be, right? So this is a really nice beer. There are 0 hot side hops in this. Malt wise, it's Golden Promise again as the base malt, and then just a ton of oats. We're looking at a little over 30-some% adjuncts. We've got oat malt, we've got flaked oats, and then we've got a bunch of unmalted wheat from Rahr, which we found gives it a nice kind of tangy sweetness. Really like the unmalted wheat that we're using. And then we're adding hops immediately upon adding yeast. So the very beginning of fermentation, we're adding hops, and then we dry hop it again at the end of fermentation. So we're taking advantage of that kind of the biotransformation, where you're getting some additional thiols and some other aromatics from those hop oils. And the hops in this is Citra, Eldorado, and Simcoe. And again, it's not going to be extremely, it's not going to look like pulpy fruit juice, and it's not supposed to, but it's still supposed to be hazy. And some of that's making sure it's going to stand up over time. The haze here is basically a combination of protein and polyphenol compounds that are binding together. It's not yeast. If you were to have yeast in this beer, it would taste poopy and gross after a week or two. So we're centrifuging this beer. And again, the haze is all that, the protein from the oats and the adjuncts and the polyphenols from the hop load. It's giving it that nice, hopefully stable haze. And it's not 100% foolproof. We still get some settling at times, as everyone I think sees with some hazy beers. But overall, I've been very happy with the consistency and the stability of the haze in the beer.
How long has this one been on the market?
This launched in beginning of the year.
Oh, doing well.
So relatively new. Yeah, I mean it's doing great. Again, it's a style that everyone's kind of looking for the new brand. They're always kind of like, well, what's next? So it's kind of one reasons why we kind of retired One Man Mosh Pit and moved on to this beer. But so far I've been happy with it. Hoping they'll get some draft placements as bars start to reopen as well. It's kind of at that upper price point like Axeman, so it's definitely a premium beer. It's doing well. I'm happy with it personally.
Yeah, I mean,
Tasty.
Ben sees a different side of it than I do. I watched the beer going in and out of the warehouse, and this one we haven't been letting employees take it much.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been able to keep up with orders. So it's definitely moving pretty well so far. But as any new brand, they move really quick to start, and we'll see how it maintains.
So curiosity question, pardon my ignorance with hazy beers, but say you kept the ingredients and the process exactly the same, but you say you centrifuge this beer, so I guess there's really no way to remove the haze. But if the end product ended up clear versus hazy, would the taste profile be the same? I would imagine not, right? It wouldn't be as soft and pillowy as they say.
Not necessarily. I mean, we've done exercises where we've made basically the same beer and made it clear, but it kind of depends on really what the components of the individual beer are. The big driver of haze in this is really the protein load, and that's going to come from your oats. And at 30% oats, whether it's clear or not, you're gonna have a pretty pillowy, soft mouthfeel. And generally, it's going to be hard to get a clear beer with that level of oats in the first place. But again, it kind of depends, because we have made some beers that intentionally or not are not quite as hazy as maybe we thought they should be, but still have a really nice mouthfeel, really great flavor. And you can make like a Rogan beer that's a big rye bison yeast beer that can be crystal clear but tastes like a milkshake. So a lot of it really comes down to what you're doing and how you're handling it. But definitely this beer gets this centrifuge, so it's not a yeast haze, and that's intentional, because the yeast will definitely, while it can scrub oxygen and help with shelf life on one level, the dead yeast, as it autolyzes, is going to taste pretty crappy after some time.
This the same English ale yeast that you use in this one?
This is it's a different yeast that we're using. Yes. It's kind of a secret. We do some weird stuff with this yeast. So it's kind of
Mark, that's the exact question I wanted to ask, because I have like a yeast,
thing.
I have a yeast allergy. So your first two beers didn't trigger me, and I drank this one, and now my sinuses are all stuffed up.
Really? Do you know what kind of yeast usually triggers it?
I thought it was English yeast, but you just said the first two were English.
Yeah, the first two are English ale 007, and this is definitely not. It's closer to a German style yeast than anything, but it's still
really. I use the 3470 of Einstefan yeast a lot, but that's lager yeast, I know, but that doesn't trigger me. I'll have to keep digging then at what it is.
Interesting.
So how many yeast strains would you say you guys use in the brewery overall? Like, just rough idea.
we have two primary like ale lager yeasts that we use for most of our brewing, and then with the, I mean, at most we usually have 4 ale yeasts in the house at any time. But again, once we get into some specialty brews, we'll get a pitch for one-off stuff and use it once or twice, and then move on. Like 007 is definitely our workhorse for most of our IPAs and our hazy.
So Ben, this is really a good, a nice example of a hazy where it stills a real beer, and it isn't like grapefruit juice or orange juice or pineapple juice and some of the hazies that are out there. Are you guys looking to do any of that kind of stuff, or it's a bias here, but I hope you say no. But you know, it's just one of those things where I like this style done this way, but I don't like some of the stuff where it's just like so milky and so fruity and so crazy that it's like, it's not really beer anymore.
Yeah, but that's a good question. I mean, my biggest thing again is going to be quality, consistency, stability. This beer's got to sit on a shelf in Des Moines for 3 months, right? So we can't really brew a beer that's going to go bad in 3-4 weeks, which is kind of the style you're asking about. Yeah. I'm sure there's folks internally that would love to see some of that because it is kind of the hype beer and the ones that folks post a lot on Instagram. But at the end of the day, like, it's not something we can package in a way that's going to hold up on shelf. It's not something that we're gonna do. That being said, you know, at the beer hall, we do have an opportunity to do some draft only stuff that can kind of push the envelope and cater to some of that audience. But again, we're always going to do it in a way that's going to hold up, you know, for at least the minimum amount of shelf life we can. So, and I'm a big fan of asking the question to, you know, if you make a beer, do you like it? Would you have another? If you answer no to either of those questions, why brew it again? And some of those beers I think are fun and interesting, but if it doesn't taste great and it's like, no, I can't have another one of those. And you know, it's not true for everything. Like I probably wouldn't have 2 darkness in a night, but if you're looking at terms of something like a core brand, I think that's an important consideration to take into thought.
The key consideration when I judge too, would you want another?
Yeah.
And if it sucks, it's like, it's not going to go very far.
That's like, well, that's interesting, but I only want this much of it.
Exactly.
Depending on the style, but you know, if it's an IPA and you don't want another one, there's a problem in my mind.
Yep.
What's the IBUs on this one?
Technically, it should be 0 because there's no hot side hops. But we did get, when we run it on our machines, we get like 20 some IBUs, which I'm not a scientist, so I don't understand how that works. But there are some IBUs that you get from cold side hop additions still, despite the fact there's no isomerization in the kettle, right? So something's happening on the cold side where you're getting something that's being read as an IBU, at least on our mass spec. We're not doing GC, just mass spec, but which is a different thing. So if you ran it through the GC, you might get something different, but not really sure what it is, but you do get some bitterness, which is interesting from a beer that again has no cold side hops, or no hot side hops, I should say.
And that includes the whirlpool, like nothing.
Whirlpool hops.
Wow.
I'd say the centrifuge, you know, pulling as much yeast out as you can, makes you want to have another one of these beers because it's way more balanced than most of these hazies, and most hazies, you know, you can only have one. It wrecks your palate, like you're kind of done. So this beer though, I definitely can have another can of this. It's I don't know if a cleaner hazy is you can use that in the same you know sentence, but it's good.
What I think it is this beer doesn't have that hop burn that most hazy beers have.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that grating back of the tongue hop burn that's just awful.
Yep.
Doesn't have
I'm
it.
sure that's
Well, and it's at 7%. Do chicks dig it? Because then it could really sell.
Not so much, unfortunately, but
Dave's on the prowl, I guess. Dave's hunting.
I think the other thing about the beer too that makes it more drinkable is just it's definitely finishing right below 3 Plato, so it's like 2.7 or something. So it's relatively dry for the style, but again, that's probably going to be kind of a signature of the beers I make. I don't, other than a big dessert stout or imperial stout, like I think beer should finish pretty dry. If you're in Belgium and drinking Belgian beers, even a quadruple in Belgium tastes relatively dry. A lot of times in America, I think some of those beers are thought to be sweet just because they're oxidized, so they taste sweet. But if you're in Belgium drinking quadruples, they're actually relatively dry and drinkable. And I think that's a big component of beers at SURLY is we're going to make sure that they're, you know, dry enough that they're going to be crisp and drinkable. You still have plenty of perceived sweetness in this beer from the adjuncts and the oats and everything else. So if you have a beer finishing at 5 or 6 Plato in the style, which a lot of them are, that's kind of what gives them a little bit more of that, I don't know, just like super sweet, thick beer to the point where it's like after you have one, you just need something different.
And sometimes the style is almost purposely under attenuated.
Yeah.
And you get that weird off green flavor and just doesn't seem finished.
Yeah.
Hey Ben, are these pellet hops that you use in the dry hop, or is it more like cryo hops to try to eliminate some of that vegetable character?
These are all pellet hops. That's a good question though. We've been doing a lot of research over the past couple of years. We use Axeman kind of as our research vehicle, and we do everything from cold side extracts to cryo hops. There's Lupomax hops now from a different supplier. It's funny because we might get a little bit better efficiencies, but 100% across the board, we've always preferred the pellets to any of these cryos or Lupomax, and that's going through blind sensory panels through analysis. So, and we're not done trying. We've got some other trials coming up with other stuff, but I've definitely played around with a lot of that. I just honestly haven't gotten a product that I've been pleased with to the point where I want to use it commercially. We've actually found some of that stuff to have more vegetal notes and be more one-dimensional. And I know there's other breweries that swear by it. I've got good friends that try to talk me into it, and every time we've tried it, I don't know what it is, but we've not preferred them.
Now, your use of pellet hops, are you still using your incinerator with all of those? And I know it might be just speculative on your behalf, but ultimately pellets do disintegrate. You're talking about having even the finer portions of it ground down somewhat. Is that do you use that device with this beer too?
Not with this beer. This is all, we use that machine at the big plant, but this and Axeman and the other breweries are all made at the Brooklyn Center plant. So these are all being added by hand, just to the top of the port at the tank. So they're all just like naturally dissolving into the beer.
Okay, straight pellets.
Yep.
And I think part of our advantage with our pellet hops, we pay for cold storage the whole ride to us. We then send them off site to a deep freeze. So they're at negative 38 degrees, sitting next to a bunch of ice cream in another building. So we don't get the degradation that some places might have just storing it in their cooler.
Same places where the Pfizer vaccine is stored?
I have not seen that there yet, but who knows?
Excuse me.
So at the old brewery, there's no recirc going on with the dry hops?
No, we just add them straight to the top and just natural convection. But
okay.
Excuse me for 1 minute. I gotta use the little boys' room.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, this beer seems to be a little bit lighter in carbonation. Is it just my particular can, or does you guys purposely back off the carbonation a little?
I think you're right there. I mean, I don't brew obviously, but it is definitely lower carbonation.
Okay.
I know every different brand has a different target. So
okay.
I'm sure Ben can give you like literally the number that we shoot for on this, but
I'm guessing that's by design, make it a different type of drinkability or something?
Without a doubt. if we were to over carbonate it, it wouldn't taste soft.
Sure.
It's adds to the creaminess, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
this is a really good as far as a hazy IPA. And I'm not a big fan of the style, but this is a very nice, well done one that I
Oh,
would.
it is very
Yeah,
drinkable.
I can drink this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say it while Ben's not on here. Ben's not a fan of the style either. I
This is
mean,
well done though. This actually has some character. It doesn't taste like orange juice and it doesn't burn.
yeah,
Exactly.
you
I
got to
think that's
brew
Yeah.
what people want to drink. So obviously we're gonna make it, but it's not exactly what Ben's gonna choose to drink himself, and me neither. I mean, Steve, you know Chase, he'll drink hobby beer or all the haze beers all day,
Yeah.
and I just get fatigued after one. So
I would rather drink, an Axeman or a Furious over this any day. But like, this isn't a bad beer that I would still buy a 4-pack and drink this because it is tasty. It has a different style, and I don't mind it. But definitely rather have a West Coast IPA kind of thing.
I think the thing about IPAs for me is, it's got to finish dry, so you want to take another drink.
Yeah.
And that too many of the hazy IPAs finish sweet, and it just stops me from drinking them.
You drink one or two and you're full. Like you just can't
Yep.
drink anymore. Like, yeah. No, I think it's good.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why personally I try to err a little bit on the drier side while still kind of keeping within the guidelines of what folks want. But it also helps, I think, stability wise a little bit too, to just keep it lasting a little bit longer. But I'm kind of the same way. I want to taste the beer and want another sip and not drink it and be just full.
While you were gone, I made sure to tell him that.
Yeah.
I told him it's not your favorite style of beer overall.
I'm kind of a traditionalist. I mean, I'm a classically trained brewer, so I mean, I won't lie. 5 years ago, you had me that beer across the bar, I'd send it back. Like, and again, I appreciate now, though. I mean, I think it's part of the job as any brewer. It's like you got to approach something kind of objectively, and it was a fun challenge to kind of take on Hazy IPA and approach it in a way that's, might not be a beer that I want to make personally, but we're going to make it the best way possible. It's going to stand up. It's going to be best in its class in terms of stability. And thankful to Omar and the rest of the team for giving us the time to really kind of figure out how to do that technically, because end of the day, any beer we're going to put out there, we're going to make sure it holds up over time, that for our distributors, for our retailers, and ultimately consumers.
You probably did miss it while you were running off to the bathroom, Ben, but we did give you kudos in the fact that this is a hazy IPA that, again, most of us don't really appreciate the style, but this is a very good hazy IPA. So yeah.
Can you imagine a German brewmaster getting a hold of this beer and tasting it? That would be, they'd just flip, But it's good. I would never brew this at home either, but it's tasty.
Charlie Bamforth was talking about the fact that he was intrigued and pursuing more knowledge on doing hazy beers. And I suspect that this is the kind of thing that he may be experimenting or thinking about, which is another way to complement the beer itself. What's the CO2 level in this?
Carbonation should be right around 2.5 volumes. It's a little bit less than, say, like the Axeman or Furious, just to kind of help accentuate the pillowiness or the softness of the beer, but nothing too extremely different. But a lot of the viscousness of the beer itself from the adjuncts from the oats are going to kind of keep that CO2 a little bit subdued in terms of like kind of how it expresses itself, hopefully. So the intent is definitely to have a little more pillowy mouthfeel.
Yeah, and interesting to contrast that with German wheat beers that are over 3 atmospheres, and yet I'm not sure that I would describe them as soft, but certainly you can pack a whole bunch of those down in a sitting.
and it's funny because part of the research for this beer was we were looking at kind of the most innovative, like new technologies on the hop front with biotransformation and everything like that. But in terms of haze and all that stuff, I was looking back to wit beers, to Hefeweizens, and just seeing it like the hot side, traditional practices for those beers. And that actually informed a lot of how we make this beer technically, because a lot of people think of those beers as being a yeast haze, but there's also a lot of kind of the malt and polyphenol protein haze in those traditional style beers. That's directly from the way they're mashed and lautered. So we integrated a lot of those old school technologies to make a very new school innovative beer. I think that's one reason why we're seeing kind of that nice consistency and stability in some of that haze.
Just to give you some credit, the first two beers we had were both canned in the end of March. This one's the end of January, and it really still tastes pretty fresh.
I guess that's a good testament to that stability factor.
Yeah.
Great.
I noticed that too. It still tastes really good.
You guys use like metabisulfites or anything for shelf stability?
Are we adding sulfites?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
It's kind of it's something I've looked into, but obviously they do that with wine. The danger you run into if you go over the legal limit, you have to put sulfites added on the can, and it's a pretty fine line. And we don't measure sulfites. And it's something
you don't want to play games anymore.
You don't want to like mess up with that.
So this is just an example
what are they doing up there then?
Oxygen. Who's that? So this is just a good example of oxygen reduction at packaging, right?
Yeah, that's a great example of just the packaging line doing what it's supposed to do and keeping that DO at a minimum.
I might finish this can before we get to the grapefruit, but it's pretty yummy.
Yeah, I find myself pouring more and more of it, and with a hazy beer, that's not something I do. So good job on that.
I mean, everything you're describing is so much beyond traditional beer, you know, and that's the cool part of the whole craft brewery industry in the US and home brewers. It's like the experimentation is just awesome because it just keeps going everywhere. To pour, like I said before, if you pass this beer along a bar in Germany or in England, it's like they pull their nose up at it and go, what in the heck is this? But, you know, Americans just keep pushing the envelope, and I think it's really cool.
It is great. Like my biggest concern with kind of some of the stuff we're seeing is doing it in a way that's smart and responsible. I think there's a lot of breweries that are able to think about a flavor profile and kind of deconstruct that and build it back up. There's a lot of breweries that are doing things that are not safe in terms of package integrity, where you're putting beers that have unfermentable sugars and fruits in there that you see exploding cans and things like that. I think that's a major issue that our industry is going to have to deal with in the future, because I think there's ways to get to those flavor profiles in a safe way. But I mean, I saw a picture of a brewery the other day where there's a can labels upside down saying keep refrigerated, and there's people commenting like, well, I got this mailed to me and it blew up in the mail. It's like that's a safety concern, and that's going to cause some increase in regulation, which is nothing any of us wants. But
hey Ben, there's a brewery in Indianapolis called 420 North. Their cans like to go boom.
And in my mind,
450, 420 something. I don't know. They go boom.
Yeah, and that's not great. That's our responsibility as brewers to put out a package that's going to be safe and for consumers, and we need to take accountability and responsibility for that too. So that's the only part of the craft brewing scene that bugs me right now, is there's a bunch of people that aren't putting out products that are safe and are not taking responsibility for that when they do explode. And at the end of the day, someone's going to lose a finger or something, which is not great. But other than that, I think the innovation and experimentation in craft brewing has always been a big part of the industry, and it's fun to see. And you know, sometimes I might shake my head a little bit, but that's a good thing. It pushes you, it challenges you as a brewer, as a consumer, as to what beer can be, and that's why I'm in the industry. That's why I got it in the first place. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I used to homebrew myself, and I think my problem with some of the current industry is that instead of trying to use your ingredients to create a flavor profile, you're just putting that in the beer. I don't want somebody to throw hot dogs in my beer. You know, if you want it to taste like that, try and create it. You know, add some smoked malt and whatever else to give it that impression. And I hate that we're taking the cheap way too often as an industry, rather than trying to be creative to make it taste like that.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing with my brewers when we're working on innovation. They're pitching ideas like we do. My brewers always pitch darkness variants and other stuff, and well, my brewers want to do a s'mores darkness, and I was like, cool, but you're not adding marshmallows. You need to figure out how to deconstruct that flavor profile and build it back up in a way that is using raw ingredients that are safe, that are, you know, plentiful, that we can use in a way that's I don't know, creative and smart and innovative. Like, it's possible. I mean, people have been doing that for years and years and years in the food industry, and like just thinking a little bit more about it and coming more strategically to the table with ideas. And yeah, it may not look as great on Instagram, but it's gonna be a better beer in the long run in terms of again, safety, stability, all that stuff.
I forgot who made it, but I had a beer that was called Ham on Rye. I had it at Three Floyds, and it was a European brewer. But the thing was that it tastes exactly like ham sandwich, you know, on rye bread, and it was literally just, it was malt, it was the flavor that they put together.
Rock beer.
And I thought, yeah, and it was smoky and it was flavored, and I thought that was just amazing. And to me, that was like, this is real brewing. This is like craft stuff that they know what they're doing about.
Yeah, that's the fun part to me. Like I can never imagine just dumping a cinnamon roll in a beer. I'd much rather sit down and figure out how to do that flavor profile in a way that's creative and interesting, you know, like, but who am I?
Yeah, I think we agree with you.
I don't have a lot of time, guys, so I want to go through the next beer. I'm gonna have to jump off here in about 15-20 minutes. So even if you're not ready, I'm going to talk about the next beer because it's kind of goes right along with innovation. So we've got Grapefruit Supreme. Hopefully you guys have seen this out in market. We also have a Supreme variety pack with 3 other flavors. This is cool. This is a beer I've been working on for 2.5 years. And it's awesome. I've been drinking a lot of them over the past couple of years. And it's beer, but it plays in the world that we're seeing now that's growing with seltzers and alternative malt beverages. But I'm very happy to say that this is 100% beer. There's no adjuncts in here. It's malt, barley, water, hops, yeast. And it's basically a Berliner Weiss based beer with grapefruit emulsion added. I think the branding's done really well. I think everything about this beer is just kind of knocking out of the park. And 4.5%, it's the perfect beer for summer. And a couple of years ago, we started talking about, should SURLY make a seltzer? And you guys can probably guess my answer to that. I'm not the owner though, so it's like if you tell me to make one, again, we'll make the best one we possibly can. But then we kind of went down this route with Grapefruit Supreme, and again, it's not a seltzer. It's not going to be a direct competitor, but I think it can play in the same world. The challenge with this beer is how do you make a kind of a Berliner kettle sour style beer on the scale that we make it. And we actually worked with the guys that sell us our caustic and our acid, our chemical guys, to produce an organic acid blend that we could use in the beer. So we're not kettle souring this beer. It is an additive, but it's something that we proprietary built with our suppliers. So we basically brewed a bunch of different sour beers, and then we broke it down and analyzed the exact acid profile of those beers and built it back up. So this is a blend of, I think it's like 7 different organic acids. So obviously lactic, malic, propionic, there's a little bit of acetic, a few other acids, and it's so we are building on the back end. So it's very kind of like a science beer, but it's all based on traditional brewing styles. And then we're adding fruit at the back end. So again, 2.5 years of innovation and partnership with some of our vendors to kind of literally create a new product to use in this beer. I think it turned out really, really well. And so we've extended the line now to include mango, black cherry, and lime. You can find a variety pack. I highly recommend picking it up. They all are awesome. The lime is probably my favorite, but yeah, again, really easy to drink. I think it ended up about 130 carbs or 130 calories. So it's definitely kind of plays in that same world where folks are worried about that kind of thing. But in my mind, it's just a great summer beer. Kind of plays along the same lines as a Radler without the sweetness. And again, able to recreate that in a consistent way, which is awesome.
I'm guessing you're using a grapefruit puree when you're doing it.
Yeah, it's actually like a grapefruit emulsion, so it's from real fruit, but just like a really easy to handle and really easy to replicate. Because again, we're talking 600 barrels of beer, so it would be the biggest challenge with this is how do we brew a beer like this on that scale? Because we had to figure something out. We had to be innovative. We can't kettle sour beers at that scale. It's just not possible. But this beer was so slamming that we had to figure out a way. So it took a couple of years and a lot of work in small scale in the lab and with our partners. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. And it's all organic. It's all natural and tastes fucking awesome.
But that's very cool that you actually, Ben, if I'm not mistaken, that you actually really kind of doctored the sour profile, like you did it with a blend of acids to profile it as a true sour beer.
Yeah, so we're not just adding like lactic acid or citric acid. It's actually we took a brother. We actually had him analyze a bunch of different beers and broke down those acids, split them out, and then kind of rebuilt that back to add back in. So. It's interesting. It's the first time we've ever really done anything on that scale like that, but really pleased with the results. And
it's really good. Yeah.
It's one of those beers where I remember the first time we made it, I think I had a 12 pack. I came home and we had a huge snowfall and it was around this time of year. So it melted. I think we had a foot of snow. My garage was flooded. So I had the sump pump out there and I was working out there, and like an hour later, I looked down, there's like 3 cans left in my 12 pack. I was like, oh shit, whoops. But that was a sign that it's a really good beer. It's going to do really well. And so we've slowly kind of brought it from a variety pack, kind of a standalone release. We did grapefruit on its own last year. And now this year we've got a variety pack with 3 additional flavors. And it's done really well for us. And I won't lie, it's maybe not the most surly thing we've ever done in terms of what we're kind of known for, but I think if you put it in the perspective of it's, instead of making a seltzer, we made this beer. I think it is actually pretty surly, pretty, taking the road less traveled, taking the harder path and still making a product that's going to compete in the same world. I think the same folks that drink seltzers, if they have one of these, are hopefully going to prefer this. Because again, it's still 100% beer.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
My wife likes the like a little bit tart or sour with grapefruit. This is golden for her.
Probably like this.
No, this is golden for me. This is great.
My personal hack is I usually take the can, I take a big drink, and then I'll add like a little tequila or mezcal straight to the can. And
I do that with Natter Days.
That sounds ingenious.
Shot of vodka to Natter Days.
No. Tequila on this would be perfect.
We just got a secret menu hack straight from the head brewer. So
yeah,
we're gonna try that for sure.
So I could see cans of this being tossed from boat to boat out on the lake. Man, this stuff's wonderful.
Wow, I can't believe I've never had it before.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a left turn from the beers we had before, and again, I've heard from folks saying it's not surly, but I would disagree with that. I think the level of innovation and the commitment to making a beer that they play in seltzer that's still a beer and not a seltzer is pretty awesome.
I would say you did more work on this beer than almost any beer we've done.
This and the hazes are probably almost equal, because I think I didn't mention this earlier, but before we released our first package hazy beer, I think we brewed 12 different pilot batches. So both of these beers have had a lot of work done on them to make sure they're done right.
Nicely done.
Yeah. We've been doing these virtual tastings for a little over a year now. And I think this is the first one where we've actually had a fruit beer in the mix. And then to end on it as well, like, well done. Well done. That's all I can say.
It's a good one to end with because it's a palate cleanser. It's low ABV. I mean, it's nice. And again, it's weird. It doesn't taste like beer, but it is beer, 100%.
That's crazy.
I can tell you from experience, a 12 pack is easy to drink in a day.
I can see that. I can absolutely see that. Yeah.
But you could take it on the golf course too, and you could still hit a drive.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. Going to be a good golf beer.
And I've had parties over the last couple of summers. We've had grapefruit out, and you can imagine I've probably got plenty of beer, but this was always the first beer to disappear. And again, that's a good sign that we've got a hit on our hands.
It's really funny that they're mentioning it's a golf beer because we're literally packaging some specifically for golf courses. Because they don't want the 12-ounce beers. So we're doing 16-ounce for golf courses and stadiums.
We know target audiences. We know what's up.
Good marketing. Good marketing. Yeah.
Interesting. 16 ounces for
I've
golf.
got the big one right here. Pretty nice.
What,
Hey,
4.5, you said?
Not for me.
Big can.
Well, yeah, the beer cart doesn't come around that often, so I got
But these will also be in like the Twin Stadium, so they'll be nice for venues and stadiums and stuff too to have in the tall boy.
That beer is going to take off in the stadium. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben,
Big
can you
people
talk
there
about
for-
your artwork behind you there? What is
This artwork or that
behind
artwork?
you on the wall, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to see, but my friend Rocco Rodrigo made those for me. He's an old friend. One of my best friends I went to high school with moved to Querétaro, Mexico, and he was a friend of hers. And he actually moved up here, and I got him a job at the beer hall in the kitchen. But he's a great artist. So when I bought my house, I commissioned a piece from him, and then a couple of years later, I commissioned another piece. But he's back in Mexico now. But he's got a great. I don't know if you're on Instagram, but he's got a great profile.
It looks like something that would be on a can, so that's
Yeah,
why.
it's kind of weird Mexican modern. Rocco _ DRILO is his Instagram handle. He does great work.
Looks very cool.
Well, I will say that like Ed was saying, we've been doing these for a long time. We've had some really good tastings, but I think this one really stands out just beginning to end, and even styles that I'm not even into, but just quality, very good quality.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for having me. And again, like my biggest thing is like no matter what style beer we're gonna brew, we're gonna do it in the best way possible and make sure it's true to brand. It's gonna hold up over time. We can repeat it, and that's kind of what SURLY does and what we've always done. I learned that from Todd and learned that from my teachers at UC Davis. It's no matter what you can do, it doesn't matter if you can't do it again and again and again and again, and make sure it tastes the same and it holds up over time. And so it's kind of the biggest thing how we approach beer is make sure that we can do it right and that it's gonna taste right and hold up over time.
Hey, last question. I know you got to go soon, but you guys plan on coming to Indiana anytime soon? I mean, Northwest Indiana. So it's not hard to get to Illinois, but
yeah,
I'm exceptionally lazy. So.
I can tell you from the shipping standpoint, being in Illinois and in Michigan, I would love to have that drop in Indiana. I do not know if our sales team's working on that though.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, our big focus in the next couple of years is, or it should be anyways, is increasing our chain placement stuff. And that just means more states and the footprints around there. So time will tell. This last year kind of threw us all for a loop. So everything's kind of up in the air, to be honest, in terms of what our plans are. But one of our big focuses again is chains, and as we move around the country, we're gonna have to just start building that footprint a little bit. But so we'll see. It's a little, like I said, like Jeff said, we're not really sure what the plan is. I don't think anyone's really sure. We're just trying to get through the pandemic and get through the other side, and then kind of take stock of where we are and where we need to be.
Well, it's a short trip for me, so
Yeah.
definitely worth it.
But
thanks, guys.
Yeah,
And more on a personal level, if you guys end up down in Illinois for any reason, we could definitely have a boss get together at my house. We got plenty of room here and stuff like that. So
Oh yeah,
you're always welcome to hang out here, and we could drink and share beers.
And we experiment too over in this area. Tomorrow I'm doing an imperial oatmeal stout that we're going to be putting in a Maker's Mark barrel. So come on
lovely.
by in about a year when it's coming out.
Sounds great, guys. Well, again, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for drinking all the beers, and hopefully we'll see you out in the real world at some point. And
nice work.
Same to you guys.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate your time.
Jeff and Ben both.
Thank you, Ben.
If you're ever up in the area, hit us up. We'll be around. So
Cheers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
cheers.
Jeff, you guys are pulling quality, man. Seriously, this shit was delicious.
It was good.
Really good.
Oh, excellent.
It's I've got a unique perspective. I make sure all the beer gets where it needs to get. And I've been around the brewery since it started. I worked Darkness Day back in 2007.
Wow.
So as much as I've only been there for 7 years, I care about it a little more than that. So it's been really up and down the last couple of years. We got a lot of people that don't like us. They've got their reasons. Some are purely because we're big. We're not that big, but we're the 38th biggest craft brewery. We're almost identical in volume to Revolution.
Oh,
Okay.
We're actually pretty spoiled, Jeff, in Illinois because it's kind of an extremely competitive market, and it's kind of a central location for almost all brewers. So we get a lot of choice and at a decent price.
I know Illinois well. My in-laws are all in Illinois. Actually, my wife and kids are in Exit 1 in New Buffalo, Michigan right now.
Oh yeah.
oh, nice.
So, I'm often in Chicago, and then I take the trip into Michigan, which is literally you drive 2 miles and you're in Indiana. So,
Yeah.
We pretty much consider New Buffalo part of Chicago.
well, everybody that lives there is from Chicago anyway, right?
Right.
Pretty much, yeah.
I don't see it much other than Illinois plates when I'm there.
Yeah, and we thank all the Illinois drivers for funding the state on their traffic tickets as they zip through Indiana at, I don't know, Chicago speed limit.
Yeah.
Those are suggestions.
Yeah.
Well, Chicago's the first city I went in where the speed limit seemed like more of a challenge.
It's the first car. If you're first in line, you set the speed limit. And if you're second car, you pass the first car. Now it's you.
If you're not doing 25 miles over the speed limit, you're slow. Like
You're not trying.
I'm very
If you're
much
not
like,
doing, if
try
you're
and
not
drive
doing
with
that on
flow.
if you're not doing that on the Borman, it's called you get rear-ended.
Yeah.
The mayor of Chicago has instituted a real hard hit on drivers that they're going to ticket them using speed cameras if they go 6 miles per hour with a posted limit. So, and it's $35 the first hit.
Yeah, I've gotten the mailed plate from Illinois before. Mine was not for speeding, luckily. It was for not having my iPass in the car.
Wow.
But yeah, we have an iPass. We're down there often enough.
Welcome to Illinois.
Yeah, right.
The craziest tolls I've actually seen are in New York, where you pay based on where you exit. You don't pay based as you go. And it's really, really confusing when you go there the first time and like, oh, you want to see that receipt from there? And then if it's in the middle of the night, you have no idea because there's nobody working. You just kind of guess.
So Jeff, you actually were there pretty much from the beginning, huh?
Yeah, I mean, SURLY started in 2006. I guess there was kind of a darkness day in 2006, but that was releasing growlers of darkness. There were a total of 90. I remember Omar telling me he was concerned how the hell he was going to sell 15 barrels of Imperial Stout. Whereas now I think we're usually doing around 600 barrels of darkness now.
Wow.
And we're actually going to scale back by demand. We're going to brew less darkness this year than barrel aged darkness, which is really throwing me off.
That's very cool.
So barrel aged darkness is out in the wild and on shelves, or even if it's making that far, it's out there, right?
It is out there. It's been out there for, I don't know, about 35 days. So I don't know how things move there. I know Lakeshore, who is our main distributor in Illinois, we also use Schomburger. And then for downstate, in Peoria, we use Marketplace Selections. But Lakeshore's by far the volume driver there. They have really scaled back from any high-end items because they go by what Binny's sells. So if it's not moving in Binny's, they don't buy it from us.
Huh. Has anyone seen it out in the wild yet?
Yeah, Dustin, the Open Bottle had it, but I don't know if they still do. I mean, I think it might.
I wouldn't expect. I'll look, but I'd be surprised if they do. But I'll check tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mark. That's one of those things.
I would guess the places you're going to find it that it's still sitting around would be your Binny's or even like Mariano's or Jewel, where people aren't looking for it there.
Yeah.
Here in Minnesota, the cheapest place to buy it is Costco.
Jewel? No shit.
Wow.
Not my Jewel.
I can't tell you for a fact. I can just tell you around here, like it sits on shelves at Target longer than anywhere else.
Wow. That hurts. That hurts.
Yeah, I mean, so we sent 70 cases to Illinois. Our biggest distributor here in Minnesota, I think I know on their first shipment was 11 pallets, so 770 cases. And I think they took another 300. But that's they do 70% of our business.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, we still got to take care of the hometown.
Right.
I've argued that many releases should only be put in Minnesota. Our sales team hates it when I say that, but in Minnesota built us. We've got to continue to support that.
You keep growing brand loyalty over time. That shit just gets deeper and deeper embedded. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, Ben talks about chains, and that's a huge part of what we have to do as a larger brewery now.
Yeah.
But really, our opportunity is not in other states. It's in the rest of this state, because we can drive an hour and not find Furious on draft anywhere. So we got to hit all the lake towns and all that kind of stuff and try and sell more of our beer.
Maybe you could get the Hell on tap in those areas, something that's a little more, that's more drinkable maybe, but that's harder to
doesn't
make.
do as well actually for them. It's
a good beer.
Being a Helles lager, it's a little more bitter than most
Okay.
Helles
Yeah.
lagers, so it's a good transition for people, but they don't usually stay on it for long.
It actually tastes like beer, so there's the downfall, I guess.
There is that. I mean,
yeah.
I fully say that Grapefruit Supreme doesn't taste like normal beer, but
no,
I drink a shit ton of it.
It's so good.
Hell is also a very good beer. I mean, that's a good drinkable beer. You can pound some of those. I mean, you could drink.
I've got a 12 pack in my fridge right now. So
yeah.
Hey, Jeff, what is the time frame of abrasive? I just want to write it down.
Abrasive usually, I want to say we release it in October, but I have the brand calendar close to me because you guys are asking questions about that stuff. So I've got our stuff up on the website here. let me, I think it's October through the middle of December.
Okay.
Well, let me verify that.
And do you guys still do overrated or no?
Overrated is gone. I miss it. Our new seasonal, so we do a new seasonal beer every quarter. Our new seasonal is Havoc Machine. It's like a beer that was brewed 10 years ago. It uses no new hops. It's very dry in the finish. It's about bitterness.
What did you call it?
It's my
Hype
type-
machine?
Havoc Machine.
Oh, Havoc machine. I don't think I've seen that.
Is it an IPA?
It
or-
just shipped 2 weeks ago. So it's just starting to hit stores now.
Is it IPA based or what's
Yep. It's a West Coast IPA.
It's on the list.
Hell yeah.
Abrasive, they show November, December.
November, December. Okay.
So that's right. We'll be brewing it in October to release in November.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's cool. The other one, the Havoc Machine, the new one, that's going to be coming out what now or
It should just be arriving in stores in the last week or so.
Cool.
I can bring up let me get the
Yeah. We'll
sell sheet so I can talk about it more, not out of my ass.
Yeah.
What's
You
the
can talk
closest
about-
place to Steve's house?
You could talk out of your ass with if you want, or else you could actually give us details. But either way, it sounds good.
It is Warrior, Chinook, Cascade, and
Right.
Chinook, Cascade, and Amarillo dry hop. 2-row caramel, acidulated and flaked oats. It's for us our basic. Almost every IPA we have has some oats in it. Furious is probably the exception. Even Abrasive is fairly oat heavy.
Really?
Todd always liked oats to smooth out beers.
This gives
And that
it more
hasn't
flavor.
changed since he left.
Abrasive is pretty clear though. Wow.
Yep. It's all, our hazy multiverse is 30% oats. I think you're looking at less than 10 for Abrasive. It's more about the mouthfeel than it is about the look of it.
Hey, Jeff, one of the things that you might want to consider is that if you have a release calendar, that if you could send something like 4 times a year to Boss, one of us, be Steve or Mark or whomever, we could just crank that out for our membership, and people would know what to expect when.
Yeah, I can get that to you. Unfortunately, we haven't done one. So a lot of people are calling it the candemic. The can shortage going on right now has forced us to eliminate some brands just because we can't get the aluminum to support all of our brands.
Yeah.
So we recently canceled a new beer we were going to do along with Rocket Surgery. That was kind of our lower price point hazy beer. They're both done as of, they're still in you'll find Rocket Surgery probably in the market, but we don't brew it anymore. It's a rough time for brewers to package beer.
Jeff, I had God, I don't remember when it was. I think it was still hot outside. But brewery not to be named got a 4-pack for us. And it had the plastic 6-pack holder on top, and I'm popping the cans out. And it was the darkest beer of the bunch. And the lid came with the plastic pack, and there went dark stout in many a direction, and that was a nightmare to clean. And they said they had sourced another vendor for those cans, and they were not good cans. They were not good cans at all.
It is true across the board. I mean, we used to literally send cans that we couldn't use to our recycler and just have them crushed. And now that's like gold. wrap them or label them or whatever we can do to try and reuse them. But the hard part of that for us environmentally is once that's wrapped in plastic, you're not really supposed to just throw it in the recycling. You should be cutting that off and then throw it in. So that kind of sucks. And then you always have times where that wrap doesn't really cover up the artwork underneath it. So you can see right through it. It's not really the look we want. But everybody's grasping at straws to be able to package a beer right now. It's
So that's still even now a very real thing, huh?
oh,
This
we
is
don't
going
even
back.
know how many. We don't know how many can loads we're going to get in May. Ball has not told us how much we'll get.
Yeah, that's going back to last summer, late summer.
Yep, we've got some contracts for cans that are more than twice what we normally pay, just so we can package beer because we don't have a choice.
So do you not have a bottling line? Is everything canned?
The only bottling line we have is a 4-head Maheen that we use for 750 milliliter bottles.
Yeah. Okay.
If you've seen a Maheen,
no,
it's so you're in Indiana.
Yeah.
You know
it's hard.
Bruges, right?
Huh?
You know Bruges?
Yeah.
So I was talking to Ted about our Maheen, and when he used to brew in Japan, he brewed on a Maheen.
Okay.
Or he packaged on a Maheen. He's like, yeah, you know, we do 20, 30, 40 cases in a week there. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we do all our darkness on. And
Holy crap.
last time we
It's
did
a 4-head system?
we've done 60,000 bottles through that 4-head Maheen. It's pretty labor intensive and pretty insane how much tweaks we have to do to just make beer go through correctly.
How much volume do you lose dialing it in, or do you dial it in with water or something before you start running product?
We start with +1, which is our blonde ale that we do for First Avenue.
There you go.
And we'll run 10 cases through just to see how it's working, adjust fill heads or whatever else we need to do, and then start running through beer that's
That's
a
a
little
scary
more scarce.
That's a oh shit, well, that's a little bit of pucker going on there, huh?
Yeah,
right.
I'm really glad that we do less and less bottled beer because quite honestly, the package integrity is way better on the cans.
I agree. I prefer cans myself. I really do.
Pushed so long to put regular darkness into cans, and Omar doesn't want to hear it.
I would love that. 12 ounces. Give
I
me
think
12
a lot of people would love it because your price per ounce would go down.
Give me a big ass beer in a 12-ounce can. I'm all over that.
And a 12-ounce can is as much as you need. You don't need 25 ounces of that.
And it ages better. It just does.
Yeah.
Well, we had I don't know, in a previous tasting we had with a local brewery, they were talking about the same exact thing. Like they put their specialty beers in cans, and all of a sudden, like they noted, like their sales went way down, and they couldn't figure out why. Because beer, craft beer drinkers would prefer it into like a 12-ounce can instead of a 22-ounce bottle. So they couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. But you lose like that, specialness of, or the novelty of, the 22-ounce bottle, with the wax, top and
there you go. You can't wax a can.
It's just a can of beer. It's not, it's not special. But like
That's true.
When you were showing the box can earlier, that's a great idea because then you got the can and you still got the specialness of it.
Yeah, the boxes are, I mean, it's hard to tell on a video like that. They're embossed with metal foil. They're awesome looking. So we did 13 that way, 14 that way. The Culture collab with New Belgium, and my dog, of course, is not going to cooperate now.
That's all right.
And then all the darkness variants now are done in 16-ounce single cans. But I mean, we're manually opening every one of those boxes and dropping the can in.
Wow.
You have to wipe every can because when you're canning it, you get a little bit of residue. And the darker beers, it tends to stay on those matte finish cans. So it's a lot of work.
You better pet
Really?
that dog. I would.
No, I'm not sure what she wants right now.
She
She's
wants
had
love.
all the treats you can possibly imagine.
She
while we've
wants
been on
like
this
right
call.
about there, right behind it.
No, she's on the other side of the desk, so I can't even get at her.
She
Oh.
needs to pee.
She's already been out. That's one time I had to take a break was to let her out.
You know what? Throw some darkness in a black can. I've seen black cans out there. That's kind of cool.
We have black cans. We have
Yeah.
black lids for +1, but
Yeah, don't
I
listen to
can't
me.
do
I'm a half drunken home brewer. I don't know, but I don't care what it comes in. I'll buy that shit in a can.
you know, I think the biggest problem is we've gotten bigger is we're not catering to people like us in this call anymore. That's a small portion of our base. It's now your mom that's going to the grocery store and getting our beer. So it's really different to think about how you present beer to them. You know, we can't put every beer at 6.66% anymore. And that was kind of the thing for a long time. We get complaints about saying hell on it, or pentagram.
God.
Pentagram
Really?
being the devil's, beer.
You know what?
Sometimes we just kind of throw it back at them.
Give them some of these.
Our BC small batch beers this year so far, give the devil his due, and the new one that's coming out is Devil in Threes, or it's another devil reference. So it's kind of like, how much can we play with that versus piss off 30-40% of the people that are buying our beer.
Well, let me tell you a story here in the Chicago area. My wife was shopping in a grocery store, and she had a 6-pack of Goose Island beer, and their telephone number was 1-800-GOOSE-ME, and some woman behind her was looking at the unique can and was so offended by the goose meat part that she complained to the management. Goose Island has survived very well and sold for $38 million to Anheuser-Busch. But
I know the transition too. I have a friend that brews for Goose, so there's good and bad to it, right? For him, he's no longer working for everybody's favorite little craft brewery, but there are some advantages to having the Anheuser-Busch benefits and things like that too.
Oh yeah, right.